It was a quiet night at the hospital. The emergency lights cast a faint glow on the sterile walls, creating an atmosphere of stillness. Nurses and doctors working the night shift exchanged soft conversations, their voices blending with the occasional sound of footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. Tonight seemed uneventful, until the automatic doors at the main entrance slowly slid open. Everyone assumed it was a patient entering, but instead, a German shepherd appeared. His coat was matted with dry mud, and his deep eyes reflected both exhaustion and resolve. This was Max, a retired police canine, who had once served with distinction. Max moved cautiously but purposefully, carrying something in his jaws, a small bundle carefully wrapped in an old cloth. The nurses exchanged stunned glances. One of them hesitated before stepping forward, curiosity overcoming fear. As the bundle was gently unwrapped, it felt as though all the air had been sucked out of the room. Inside was a baby, tiny, frail, and struggling to breathe. His skin was pale, his chest rising and falling irregularly. "Oh my God, it's a baby," a nurse gasped, her voice trembling with shock. Suddenly, the stillness of the night shattered as the emergency room burst into action. Nurses and doctors sprang forward, their hurried footsteps echoing through the halls. Equipment was quickly prepared as the medical team fought to stabilize the fragile infant, each second ticking away like an urgent countdown. No one could believe what they were witnessing. A dog had walked into the hospital carrying a baby on the brink of death. Max stood still, silent and calm, showing no signs of fear or distress. Yet his eyes were filled with a desperate plea for help. The nurses and doctors, though experienced in countless emergencies, had never encountered anything like this before. "Quick, check his breathing and heart rate," a doctor instructed, snapping everyone into action. A nurse knelt beside the bundle, her hands trembling as she carefully unwrapped the cloth. The baby's skin was icy cold to the touch, his tiny body covered in dirt, his breathing faint and irregular. "This child is severely dehydrated and malnourished," the lead doctor said gravely. "We need unwrap now. We have to stabilize his respiration immediately." The heart monitor emitted a slow, weak beeping sound, signaling just how critical the situation was. A nurse quickly connected the baby to an oxygen supply, carefully adjusting the flow. Everyone worked in silence, the tension thick in the air as they raced to save the baby's life. As the medical team focused on the infant, one of the nurses kept glancing at Max. The German shepherd remained by the entrance, unmoving, his gaze fixed on the child as though waiting for a miracle. He didn't bark or growl, he simply watched, his eyes carrying an intelligence and urgency that felt almost human. "This is so strange. How did he know to bring the baby here?" the nurse murmured under her breath, a mix of awe and disbelief. No one had an answer. All they knew was that Max had acted as if this was the most important mission of his life. As the baby's vitals showed slight improvement, the tension in the room eased. However, they all knew this was only the beginning. The child remained in critical condition. Yet, thanks to Max, he now had a fighting chance. News of the bizarre incident spread quickly throughout the hospital. Within minutes, the police were called. Officer Daniels, the lead investigator, arrived at the scene with his team. The nurses recounted the surreal story, their faces still filled with shock. "We have no idea where the dog came from," the head nurse explained, her voice trembling slightly. "He brought the baby in, placed him on the floor, and just stood there. That's all we know." Officer Daniels narrowed his eyes, taking in the sight of Max near the entrance. "A dog carried a baby to the hospital? That's hard to believe," he muttered, though his expression softened as he observed Max's calm yet watchful demeanor. "Has anyone tried scanning for a chip?" Daniels asked. A young officer stepped forward with a scanner and cautiously approached Max. However, as soon as he got too close, Max backed away, his posture tense but not aggressive. His eyes remained sharp and alert, as if warning them not to come any nearer. "This dog's been trained," the young officer remarked. "He might be a retired canine." Daniels nodded and took a step closer, his movements slow and unthreatening. "Easy there, buddy," he said softly. Max studied him for a moment before allowing the officer to clip a leash onto his collar. "Let's see where he came from," Daniels instructed, signaling for his team to follow. Max began to walk, his steps deliberate and steady, as though he knew exactly where he was going. The officers followed closely, their patrol car lights casting long shadows on the pavement. After a tense walk through deserted streets, Max stopped in front of an old, dilapidated house. The front door was ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. "This is it," Daniels said quietly. The officers exchanged wary glances before cautiously stepping inside. The smell of mold, stale air, and rotting food filled their noses as they moved through the house. Max led them through a cluttered living room toward a small door at the back. "Stay sharp," Daniels ordered, his voice low and tense. When they opened the door, they found a small, dimly lit room. In one corner stood an old, dusty crib. Around it were scattered signs of recent occupancy, an empty dog food bowl, a tattered blanket, and a few children's items strewn across the floor. Max slowly approached the crib and sniffed the spot where the baby had once been. "The baby was here," an officer whispered. Exhausted, Max finally collapsed beside the crib, his body going limp as though he was allowing himself to rest for the first time. His mission was complete. The officers searched the house, eventually discovering a handwritten letter left behind. "I no longer have the strength to care for him. Everything around me is falling apart. All I have left is Max, and I know he'll do the right thing. I hope that one day, someone will forgive me." The letter wasn't signed, but its message was painfully clear. The mother had reached a point of utter desperation, entrusting her child to the only companion she had left, her loyal dog. After searching the neighborhood, officers found an elderly man who remembered the woman. "She was always with a large dog. That must be him," he said, nodding at Max. "She had a baby a few months ago. Then one day, she just disappeared." Hours later, police found her sitting motionless on a park bench, clutching herself against the cold. "We found your son," Officer Daniels said gently. "He's safe now." Tears streamed down her face. "Noah, is he alive?" When she was reunited with her son at the hospital, Rachel broke down in sobs, holding his tiny hand. Max sat beside her, watching over them. "You saved us, Max," Rachel whispered. "I'll never forget what you've done." Their story spread, inspiring an outpouring of kindness from the community. Rachel and Noah found a fresh start, with Max by their side, a testament to love, loyalty, and the power of hope.